for just a few more people to come, if we have more coming on. So Zoe's letting everybody in. We have the waiting room set up. So Zoe's starting to let people in. Just one quick logistical point, and I will maybe run through this a couple times as we go. This week, because we had a lot of people join the meeting, we are set up slightly differently. So if you turn your video on, we will be able to see you. So if you do not want us to see you, you should turn your video off. And I think that is just done at the bottom of your screen. So I know, I can see some people waving. Hi, there's the klaxon there. I see Wendell. So I don't mind if we see you. And I don't know, it's not clear to me exactly who will get shown, but it's really up to you. So if you want to be private, just turn off your video. I think that Zoe has controlled, so we are the big picture for everybody. But maybe you can turn somebody more interesting into the big picture. So
the person who talks becomes the big picture.
Right. Okay. So that's true. So they did ask me.
Everyone has to be quiet and let you talk. Like I shouldn't talk, so you can.
Yeah, you. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So that's a good reminder, Craig. I recognize you. I can't see who's talking. You didn't become the big picture though. We stayed the big picture on my screen.
Oh, you're seeing the ceiling.
No, I'm not seeing anything because you know what, we have so many people. I can only see you. There you go. Oh my God, I see everybody. This is kind of fun for us to get to see you. See, I see Karen. I see Sam. I see Gary and Lori. Oh my God, we're not going to talk at all. We're just going to sit here and say hi. Hi, Bill and Lynn. Hi, Penny. It's way more fun. Let's just do this. Can you guys all see each other?
This is great for us. We get to happy hour an hour early.
Exactly. There you go. All right, you're ahead. Okay. So they did. So then there's a few people who are probably wisely have their video off. I think just to keep it a little simple, I'm having fun seeing everyone, but I'll stop. If you have questions, can you still pop the questions in through the comments, just so that you know, because we want to be the only ones talking. No, just because I think it'll be a little less confusing. So I think, I was going to do one more time killer.
Yeah, there's chat.
What's that? You heard that?
There is chat. There is chat in the bottom.
The chat. All right. Through chat through chat here. I think, well, I just turned mine on. You probably can't tell the difference. Anyway, down on the bottom is chat. And I think that's going to be the easiest way for us to do questions. Melissa just did a test and it works. What's that? Sorry?
Melissa did a test. It works.
There we go. So yesterday's, there we go. All right. All right. So I think we're on. So I think we're going to start with our program. I said I was going to start out with the sweater update. Just while we're waiting for everyone to come in. Yeah, I think if people can mute, I think most people are muted because you can see.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. So I think for the most part, that'll just save background noise. Yeah, we look like we're in pretty good shape here.
Okay.
All right. So we're on. I was just going to give the sweater update. I made a mistake, found a mistake midway through the week, so I'm still knitting, and I'm not wearing it this week, even though I promised I would. So, oh well.
But
Next week.
I want to give the sweater update too. So this is what happens. This is what happens when Sarah Heron finds a mistake in her sweater. Swear word, 4-letter word, swear. I can't believe it. And then she has to pull the whole sweater apart and put it back together. So.
Oh man, I did it. I did it all way back there. It's not good. Anyway, so really total slander and libel. I'm always totally peaceful.
She's on the other side. She's in the passenger seat of the car. Just So it's ugly.
All right. So on to Albariño.
There's Albariño.
So today's topic is Albariño. And maybe other whites, but we could probably jaw on for a whole hour just about Albariño. So we'll see how far we get. So why Albariño? Why did we plant it? How did we think of it? All of that. So basically, it's the same answer as for all of the wines that we grow. We started with the big list of what do we like to drink, and and Albariño was high on the list. And it was not a wine that oh, there's a question. Is it Zoe or is it Zoe? Zoe. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted by those questions. Oh, now, sorry, see, I cannot, I'm like, I can't look at the comments. I'm like, squirrel, I just want to go to the next thing. All right, so why do you pack Albariño? Oh, see, I'm not going to read the comments for a while. Because we love it. And then when we looked to plant Albariño, again, it was not a grape that was much planted in the area. Didn't Crystals have a little bit?
Yeah. So,
So the only place,
when
Go
we
ahead.
planted Albariño, Chrysalis Vineyards in Virginia had a little bit planted, an acre, I think. And there was a 3-acre vineyard in Napa and maybe a few vines spread on the central coast of California. That's about it. I think there were fewer than 10 acres in the country. When we planted ours, it took us 6 or 8 months probably to find the budwood for it because none of the nurseries could graft it. The UC Davis has a collection of grapevines, and they have two grapevines from every variety they can find in the world, just as sort of a museum piece. So they had 2 Albariño vines, but you can't get many buds off of that. So after 6 months of asking around, we finally found it's called the Fore Vineyard, Fore, in Napa, and it's really on the very outskirts of Carneros. But it was 3 acres. It's since been I think torn out because it was near the bay at the very bottom, and I think it got inundated and flooded. So, but it's been torn out. But it was planted, I think 6 or 8 years before that. And what they told me is they got their budwood from a guy on the Central Coast who will remain anonymous to protect his identity, who went to Spain and grabbed some sticks of, or was given some sticks of vines at one of the famous estates there and brought them back to California. You're not supposed to do that. It's called suitcasing vines, and you can get viruses and all kinds of other stuff spread around the world doing that. You're supposed to go through in this case, UC Davis, to go in quarantine for 6 years and do all this kind of stuff to make sure the vines are fine. Anyway, so that's where we finally found enough vines to actually plant our little half-acre experiment.
Mm-hmm. And so that we planted in 2004, which was basically the first planting. So when we very first started, we did a small planting in 2003 and another planting in 2004, and that was kind of the beginning. And then we loved it. So we basically, and that is planted. The old vineyard is pretty much, if you are sitting in the tasting room someday soon and looking down the driveway, the old vineyard is at the far end on the left, basically up past the barn. The vineyard that's closest to us the closest to the tasting room rather, was planted in 2004 is the central section. And then the far end is the 03. So Albariño is the top of that hill down just on this side, the tasting room side of the telephone poles, if you can remember your Black Ankle that well.
The end of the road. The end of the road
are there.
Black Ankle Road.
Yeah, they do bump in. If you're a very good reader, as you drive by, you'll see the little Albariño, the little wooden signs that say ALB, Albariño.
And we planted that half-acre, and then in 2011 we planted. It was supposed to be another 5 acres. We'll get to why it's not quite 5 acres, but it's more like 4.5 now on the East Hill. And we took the budwood from our existing block and replanted it there because we loved what we're getting, so we want to keep that clone, whatever it is, and what's going for Black Ankle. There's a question: do we have the biggest planting on the East Coast? That's a good question. I don't know if anyone has a bigger one. 5 acres. If we plant some, and I think we will in a couple of years, plant some at Live Edge, then we'll probably continue to have the biggest. Quite a bit has been planted in California since then. There's some pretty big, I know of at least one 20-acre block, and there's probably bigger ones out there. So it's become more popular out there as well. So, and just a quick note on why we chose it. We were looking for sort of try something different for white wines, and we came up with a list of things we really liked, and then said, all right, what do we think we can grow in our environment well? Albariño has got very, very small grapes, but with very thick skins, and the clusters have very few grapes on them. So imagine the grapes sort of don't touch. Viognier is sort of the opposite. You get these grapes that the berries almost get square because they're jammed in between next to each other. Albariño is totally open. So if one berry gets a problem, it doesn't spread to the neighboring berries. They don't touch. And if it gets wet, the wind and the sun can get in there and do it. So it's got thick skins.
And it turns out it is very good in the fall anyway, with not being prone to rot, not being prone to a lot of the issues that we have sometimes in a rainy year. So that worked well. GV, our Gruner, was the other one that we decided to experiment with. So those are little 2 half-acre blocks. And at that time, the ones that didn't make the list were Vermentino and Verdejo. Those were number 3 and 4. So we didn't plant them. We might plant some of those in the future, or we might plant some other things because, times have changed. But.
I mean, I guess Chardonnay and Vineyard were 3 and 4 because they did make the list. It
Yeah,
must have been 5
we
and
knew.
6. We knew those,
they weren't
because
experimental.
Those were
we knew
exactly in the experiment category.
Yeah, we
correct.
knew they
Yeah,
were.
that's true. That's true. So that's great. So that's a little bit about why we chose it. The first vintage of Albariño was 2007. So we would have had a little bit in 2007. And then on from there. Yeah. And those of you who have been black anklers for a long, long time, you'll recall we only made a teeny tiny bit in the beginning because we just had this little half acre, and we would make like 80 cases or 50 cases a year or something like that. So only in the last couple of years have we had, I don't know, significant quantities, or since the 2011 vineyard came into.
I remember back in 2010, 11, 12, in that area, we used to release the Albariño and it would be sold in about a week because there was so little of it. So glad we planted a bunch more. It's a nice vine. It has its issues and things, but
to grow. It's one of my favorites still for the whites because I feel like it's a versatile food wine. It's it's just approachable and kind of fun and easy to drink. So it's great. Oh, we should drink it.
We should talk a little bit about the wine.
Yeah. So here is what we are tasting first. I'm always supposed to show the label. Go ahead. You'll catch us like we ate our crab cakes last night and we drank most of our wine. Sorry, we were gonna wait, but we didn't. So this is I can't quite get the light right. Anyway, this is the 19 Albariño.
2019 Albariño. So Albariño is
better. There you go. Anyway, you can sort of see it better.
Albariño is kind of, I guess, it's certainly the grapes we make, it's probably the most different than Chardonnay. I guess it's sort of it is a wine that is sort of defined by its nose usually, and by the just wonderful flowers and tropical fruits and things that just come flying out of the glass when you get a really good Albariño. And then its secondary characteristic is defined by its acidity. Albariño is a very high acid grape. Again, we talked about this before. The French like to call that freshness. You can decide what you want to call it. The technical term is acidity. I guess on the palate, it is kind of freshness. Albariño is wonderfully fresh. Even in the vineyard, it's the one that we, Chardonnay has a very specific picking window, and we spent years trying to figure out when we want to pick it, because it really changes late and early. Gruner Veltliner can be picked in a long window, but it changes a whole lot. Albariño, once it gets ripe, can sit there for most years, week, 10 days, even 2 weeks without changing. The acidity doesn't drop, unlike every other grape out there. We're not sure why, but it's beautiful that way. It really helps us flexibility harvest-wise. But taste-wise, so what we expect out of a great Albariño and a great Black Ankle one is just a really expressive nose out of this. And then on the palate, some wonderful freshness, some good palate weight, and some tropical fruit. Along with that, it can be kiwi, it can be flowery, it can be all sorts of different things.
It's often more sort of citrusy and that crisp flavor profile. You get a lot. So
and it's a wine that comes from the northwest of Spain and the north of Portugal. That's where its home is, and that is all surrounded on 2 sides by the ocean. And so the cuisine in those areas is sort of seafood, and more seafood, including all kinds of stuff that I've never eaten before that apparently comes out of the sea when we were there. So it's the quintessential seafood wine. It's a wonderful wine with oysters. You don't see it paired that much with it, but it's a fabulous wine with things like that. It's of all kinds of seafood. It cuts through a lot of the seafood sauces and really makes them nice.
Right. And people talk about Albariño sometimes being almost like a little salty or a little briny.
Yeah.
I feel like it's more of the lemony that I pick up on, but that's like one of its characteristics, that it can have that, you feel like you're tasting the sea a little bit, or something. Maybe it's just because of what you're pairing it with often, but you have a little of that.
So one of the things I love most about Albariño is that freshness. What it does practically at the dinner table is you take a bite of food and you drink some Albariño. It sort of refreshes your mouth. It almost resets everything in your mouth. So the next bite of food is just as good as the first one. And that is a great compliment to a wine for me. Like a wine that interferes with your food doesn't do that. A wine that is meant to really refresh your palate to me is one of the great wines that you can make. And Albariño is very good at that. A really good rosé does the same thing. It's very similar in that way. So yeah, so that is different than a lot of other wines. It's fantastic at that.
Yeah.
So this wine.
We're tasting the 2019 right now. We just
Yeah, we're tasting the 2000.
Wait, so you asked.
We have so this wine, we opened this 2019 partly because Sarah's like, come on, let's open it with the crab cakes, which were wonderful. Great, we all enjoyed that. But partly also because we wanted it open for a day and try it again the next day. And we put it in the fridge. Should always put partially drunk bottles in the fridge. It slows down the cold slows down those reactions that oxidize it over time. But it does have a chance to breathe a little bit and be open. So to me, the wine was wonderful on the palate yesterday when we opened it, but it was a little shy on the nose. And today that nose has really opened up. And
yeah.
Boy, this smells like a really nice black eyed gold wine. I'm really happy with it. So this wine's a little bit young.
Right. The bad news on that is that you should maybe wait to drink it if you can, or you just have to open it a little early and give it a little air. That's the cheater way, which is what we did, and it does work. So usually you wouldn't, and I don't know that I would decant it because that might be a little too much. I think it would be too fast. But basically, if you enjoyed it now, that's great. It's going to get a lot better. And if you had any leftovers last night, which took a little self-control for us to manage, but we did have leftovers because we only had 1 mile at home, so we knew we needed to have some for today. You'll see it's going to be better. It's going to be more, the aromas are going to just be more pronounced and more evident after it's been open for a little while. And you can kind of get that swirl in the glass. And like, whose trip was it last year? 2 minutes in the blender. maybe only 1 minute for a white wine because it could get a little too much. But the little air will work. So I think it was great. I love 19.
Yeah, 19 is going to be great. It's very acidic. It's going to be a great food wine. If I were opening it for a cocktail party, I think I would pick something else because it's a little bit acidic for just by itself, but with a food, it's going to be just beautiful.
Right there. Propelling Karen with the blender trick. Only half a second. That's impressive if you can get your blender that much.
Yeah. So the reason that the nose is a little shy, we said wait a little bit. What we're talking is weeks, month, or maybe or that it was bottled a month ago. It probably needs another. There's but you've heard the Bottle Shock movie. It's a real thing. The wines just become kind of dumb for a few weeks. They get better and better and better. So this will improve a lot. The nose wise over the next month. If you have to drink it, as Sarah said, find a way to give it some air. That'll help. But if you can save it for a month, that's great.
Good. All right. So one of the big mysteries I think around white wines is do they age and which ones age and how long do they age and what do they do? So we decided we were going to open as our second wine tonight. I don't know. Should we talk more about it? We're going to open. This is the 2010. I think if you cover that. Yeah. Can you see that? So that is the 2010 Albariño, and we just opened it. You can see our bottle is still full. So I have no idea how it aged. Let's find out.
We shall see.
So I see people drinking 17 and 14. So it sounds like.
So if you can see that, it's a much more golden color.
Can you tell the difference? You can totally tell the difference.
Which is what happens usually with a white wine when it ages, partly because there is always some oxygen getting through that cork. You need to do that.
You can spray dramatic.
It needs it. Yeah, it's quite golden.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were going to talk generally about white wine aging, but Albariño in particular. When we started researching this and planting it, everybody said Albariño does not age. Like Albariño is something you drink early. It just doesn't age well. We finally got over to Spain, to the
that is before the
wow,
2 cruises ago, yeah.
a few years ago, 5 years ago,
4
maybe.
years ago, yeah.
And spent 3 days in Albariño world, and lo and behold, they had all sorts of old bottles. And I'm like, oh yeah, this stuff ages great. You want to taste some 10-year-old? It was wonderful. I don't know how these rumors get started, but we bought it hook, line, and sinker for years. We said, well, we're not saving much of our Albariño because we know it's not going to age much.
Right. In fact, I don't think we have any old ones. We went down yesterday to the library to look for, we were going to try to bring a 7 home just to see what it was doing. I couldn't find one. So it's possible one was well hidden. That we found the 10, and that's the oldest one that we could find in our archives.
Yeah. We might, look around. We might have a few bottles here and there, but not much.
I didn't go myself. I think it's pretty good. It looks pretty well. So it's possible it was hiding. I didn't look at every bottle.
So what's going to happen with these wines is the question is that little bit of oxygen that gets through over the years is going to get into that wine, and white wines don't have tannins to protect them. They have only their acidity and their whatever sulfite is in there, but that goes away relatively quickly. So it's more difficult for a white wine to age because it doesn't have those tannins to absorb that oxygen and just make softer wines.
Right, and on sort of contrarily or whatever, it doesn't need the time for the tannins to break down, or not to break down, but to lengthen. So for the reds, partly the tannins protect them and allow them to age longer, and partly you want them to age long for a while because the tannins can be a little bit harsh in the beginning. The white wines don't tend to have that, so they don't usually need to age as much anymore.
Yeah, and so what's going to happen to a white wine over the years is as it absorbs the oxygen, it's going to lose those primary aromas, and Albariño is very driven by those aromas, those citrusy aromas, the flower aromas.
Lime, flowers.
Those are known as primary aromas, and we'll get back to that on our. We talk about our trip too, because we tasted a lot of interesting stuff that way. But over time, those are going to go away. But that oxygen is also going to make the palate richer and creamier and sort of more honeyed, I guess, is one way to put it. So you get these older white wines that become very different than when they were young, but very good in their own right. And contrast this with a variety like Chardonnay. Chardonnay does not have a lot of primary aromas. It's not a very aromatic variety. It's why a lot of some producers make a lot of buttery, woody Chardonnays because there's not a lot of Chardonnay flavor itself. It's more about the structure. So it doesn't lose as much when it ages, but it gains that honeyed structure, and it becomes really wonderful as it gets older. So with Albariño, we sort of bought the story on it because we said, this is very primary aroma driven, and we're going to lose that over the years. What we didn't realize is that, you lose that, but there's still secondary aromas and wonderful palate richness that can come from aging on. And that's what I'm liking about this one.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very different. It's very different, the old one. And you definitely are starting to see some of those. Some of those more. I mean, not just the color, but the palate weight is definitely richer.
It's much richer. Wow, that's fascinating.
And the aromas are very different.
Yeah, it's almost got a little old Riesling kind of thing in it, but it's less expressive on the nose, and the aromas are different. But the palate has got this just kind of honeyed richness to it, which is really nice. I really like that.
I think it'll be great with food too. I think it'll be.
And it doesn't taste as acidic, actually. I think that richness that it's gaining is kind of balancing it's not the acid goes away. It's just that it's now balanced by even more richness and it tastes less so. So
aroma profile.
This is. I'm really happy with this. This is excellent. Hey, Lee.
That's kind of fun.
Hold on, Sarah. Hold on, Sarah.
It's the oldest one we have, I think, so that's good. Yeah. And I don't know, those of you who are drinking the 14s and the 17 isn't so old, but what do you think? So vintage-wise, there's a question from Wendell, if I'm saying your name right. What do we think of the vintage of 19 versus, say, like 16, 17? And you're nice to just say, let's just skip over 18. Yeah. I know 18 was not great. We're just going to stop talking about 18. So you want to talk years-wise, what do we think of 16, 17?
They're all really good.
Yeah. The last the good news on 18 was that 15, 16, 17 around, and then now 19 were all great years. So I think aging and flavors wise, you're going to see those wines should be very similar. And the Albariños we were very happy with for all those years. Yeah.
I have no idea which one's going to be better. Those three are going to be really good, really nice. So, yeah, good question because we don't know the answer.
You're right. I mean, just in how they're going to age, but vintage-wise, those were all nice vintages, and we're still, you know, they should hold up for a little bit, and they're gonna develop, you know, the way this one did, I think, where you're going to start to see the kind of super bright, super ethereal aromas temper down a little bit, and you're going to start getting a little more palate weight and a little more depth, and these kind of change in what they taste like.
Which is interesting too. Like we're talking a lot on these calls about aging.
Yeah.
And this is a good example. I love this 2010. It's really nice. Do I love it more than the 19 or the 16 or the 17 right now? No, I don't know. They're just different. I'm not. Right. It's aging beautifully, but it's not that it's getting better with age. It's getting different. And if you love those primary, you love that Albariño freshness and primary wonderful aromas, then drink it young.
Drink the young ones,
if you love golden, honeyed, older sort of wines, let it age. I'm not, I don't know. I would love to have some of each. And, I think there was a question about how well it would go with food versus
different. What would you pair differently with it? Yes. Yeah, I
wouldn't pair anything differently. This is the acidity is still there. The freshness is still going to clean up your mouth. It's just not as forwardly fresh, I guess, as it was when it was young. This was a very fresh one.
But I can see pairing this older one with like a strong cheese or something more so than I would the younger one. I think it might do better with richer flavors than you would necessarily pair the younger, like the 19 with. So I think the wine with some age on it, I could see with like an old, you know, like a really ripe French cheese or some even olives, something with like a little more of that briny saltiness. It might actually hold up. Those might hold up better to the older wine than to the younger one. Whereas the younger one will do well cutting through like big cream sauces or pairing with seafood, pairing with even like chicken or roasted vegetables, that type of thing, but on the lighter side. So I think that would be my, and just quick answer to, where'd it go? I just lost, there was a question about why was the 18 not so, I've lost my thing isn't working. What was the issue with 18? Oh yeah, there's Christine Hurt. Hi. 18, I know we just keep complaining about it. Basically, it was a super rainy year. And so it was just a challenge in general to get everything ripe and in good shape. And the skins of a lot of the wines ended up as super thin by the time we picked them. So we're seeing kind of some premature aging in those whites where the color's already getting there. The flavor profile of some of them is not unlike some more aged wines, but they're not in our usual style where we're going for this brightness and freshness and crispness. The 18s are just kind of like old before their time a little bit. And you can see it in the color. So again, they're not the style that we usually make, and they're not the style that we usually go for. So we keep complaining about them. They're not necessarily not good. They're just not our usual thing. So they're often surprising people when they taste them because it's kind of not what they're expecting. So anyway, that's why. And the year was just hard to grow, and it rained every day. We were grumpy for the entire year. So that's why we keep complaining about the year. We need to just move on. Now 20 is going to be like everyone's going to hate 20 just because it was a tough year. But the weather is going to be good, and the vintage is going to be great. So just saying. So anyway, so there's that. So back, go ahead.
Yeah. So the question about did we make a Norte? Did we make an Alegria? We've made several different Albariños in the past. So in some years when we're at the blending table, the Albariño is usually the easiest thing to blend. The four of us, Melissa, Lucienne, Sarah, and I, taste it, and usually it's like, yeah, this is great. Okay, next. We do nothing with it. You notice it's almost always 100% Albariño. It's just what it is. It's a wonderful variety that way.
It has plenty of acidity. Even if you remember last week, we talked a lot about sometimes we'll put a little bit of acidity in from our very early picked, the kind of green grapes. Albariño almost never needs that. Almost never needs anything. Yeah. We might get a couple percentage of Viognier once in a while if we need to fatten it up a little, but that's about it. Yeah. So, but
That's really good.
why
But,
the Norte or the Alegría? Yeah.
but there are some years where we have lots that are different enough that we really need to make two different wines out of them. And the first time we did that, we made an Albariño and an Albariño Alegría, which is the Spanish word for joy,
Yes.
and also my lovely wife's middle name. So
Joy,
we
Alegría.
thought that was a great name for it. Turns out that we don't have the trademark on that. Somebody else does. So we will not make it
It was a
Albariño.
gray area, but we let them have it.
So yeah, that's the
So
last.
that's why there are no more Alegrías.
No more Alegrías.
There's an Alegría vineyard somewhere in, I don't know, Sonoma or something, and they didn't think that our Albariño Alegría. They thought we might get confused. Anyway, so we just let it go.
So lesson learned. We
Lesson
now make
learned,
sure we
right?
have the trademark.
Which
and
we
things.
thought we checked.
And
Oh, yeah.
then we had another year where we also had two different wines, and one of them turned out to be almost exclusively from what we call our Albariño Norte. It's the new 4.5 acres that we planted, the northern section.
So if you're, again, sitting in the tasting room and you look to your right up that hill, the block closest to the tasting room is the northern side, and then the other end is the southern side. And there's Albariño that runs all the way along the top of that hill, all the way to the fence line, all the way to our neighbors. And so the block on, I guess, the right-hand side, if you were facing it, that's where all of this was grown. And then the rest of it came from the southern end. The regular Albariño came from the southern end, yeah.
So we decided to call that Albariño Norte. In 2019, we did not need to make two. It was fabulous. So it's all one.
Yeah.
We will do it again, and if we have one that's primarily from a block, you might see an Albariño Sud or an Albariño Norte or Albariño Viejo, which is Spanish for the old side. We might make different things, but it's all determined at the blending table what we like the best, and then we worry about a name after that. So
yeah.
we had a question about from Mark Wetzel about how about oysters as a pairing. Fabulous.
Funny you should ask.
Fabulous. Funny you should ask.
Yeah. So we are trying to cook up an oyster plan. I don't know if who's read what emails or whatever, but one of the reasons we chose crab cakes this last week was that it made a great pairing, but also that we're just trying to think about our local industries, and the seafood industry is big for Maryland, and it's suffering a lot in the current crisis. So we were just talking with Jim from Nick's. I know that's confusing, but anyway, our neighbor helps friend is named Jim, and we were just cooking up a plan for oysters. So a lot of oysters are eaten raw or on the half shell or on ice, and those we're not going to do. But he said he has an awesome oyster stew, which we're going to try, and we're going to see if we can cook up an oyster pairing. So probably in the next few weeks, he's going to go back and talk to the chef, and we're going to try to. We want to make sure we come up with a good dish and something that's easy to take home and reheat and is still going to be good the next day or whenever you take it home. So it's in the works.
And find the right some good local oystermen. Many of them have lost 95% of their business through this. So they're just the oysters ready to harvest out of the bay, but nowhere to sell them. So
he did say he has some awesome sort of showman oyster shuckers. So we're going to see if we do pull together an oyster dinner. I was like, I'm going to get a video. He said, this guy could just pop them open like nothing. So we'll see how that all goes. But and it's glad I'm reading too that people seem to enjoy the crab cakes and that all went well. So we loved ours. So it's good to hear what people thought, and if it's something we should do again. So I think we're trying to work on it. So that's great.
Yep.
The
we originally tried to plant 5 more acres of Albariño. Say that we pretty quickly got down to about 4, and the reason is twofold. We had in 2011, the year we planted them, we had our first big introduction to pesticide drift from other farms, herbicide drift. Grapevines are extremely sensitive to herbicides, to many herbicides. And not the major reason, but one of the reasons we don't use them at all at Black Ankle is that. But there are a couple in particular, 2,4-D, heard of that? Or dicamba.
Probably not, unless you're in the industry or following along. But we have
They're used by a lot of corn farmers in particular because corn's a grass and 2,4-D kills everything that isn't a grass. So they love to spray it. It's cheap.
Right.
The problem is,
weird thing. Sorry, I'm just going to. In the world of herbicide, there for some reason, and I don't understand the chemistry, but you chemists out there would. There are different chemicals that will kill any grass or anything in the grass family versus what they call broadleaf. So something that has a round leaf, like a grapevine or like most bushes, are susceptible to different kinds of chemicals than anything in the grass family. So that's how you can like spray a golf course and kill all the clover and all the plantain, all those kind of things, and leave the grass growing. And corn, since it's a grass, is not susceptible, but grapevines, because they're a broadleaf, are. So anyway, continue your story. That's the back. It's just weird. I mean, it's a weird world if you haven't thought about it at all.
So and these it turns out some of these, a couple of these 2,4-D and dicamba are the most dangerous ones. They can what's called volatilize. You spray them on a field, and up to 2 days later, if it gets hot or windy, they can pick up and move as much as 2 miles, which is kind of a scary prospect. Some of us have been working with Wine America for years to try to figure out what we can do about this on a national basis, because not a lot of people know about this process. So you don't have to spray it on the vine. You can spray it anywhere near, and it will volatilize, go up in the air, and land on the vines, and they're very, very sensitive. So I talked about how some of these chemicals are used by corn farmers, but the farmers around us have been excellent, and they know that we exist, and they don't use those at the times of years they could hurt us, and so we've never had a problem with that. Unfortunately, we had a problem with the power company. We have power lines going through Black Ankle. They sent us a message saying they were going to come up and clean the power lines. I had them come out and explained to the contractor doing it that they could not use any of those herbicides on our property, and they said okay, they wouldn't do it. And then they went ahead and sprayed it on the neighbor's property, and it volatilized and probably killed, I think it was something like 10,000 vines, including a lot of the young Albariño. So we had that problem, and then we planted the end of those rows were a little bit low as an experiment, and we've had some frost issues down there as well. So anyway, little diversion into the frustrating part of farming sometimes, but there you go. So
that's the background of our own brain. So I see a question here about, this is from our older questions, but about Spanish Albariño style versus ours, the kind of different styles in Spain and France versus what we grow, and then the Albariño festival. So we can talk about
those
that.
are the same questions.
They're kind of two questions.
Yeah. Well, so Sarah and I, we made this wine. Albariño, we've always looked at as a very straightforward wine. It's because it's driven by its primary aromas. You want to keep oxygen away from it. So we protect the juice from oxygen because it will oxidize those aromas, the precursors to those aromas. And then you keep the wine away from it because it will, again, oxidize those aromas. You always, during fermentation, you can give it some oxygen, and we do, because there's a long story, but
yeast need oxygen
the yeast,
to survive.
among
other things, but
and the yeast will eat all the oxygen before it has a chance to oxidize anything. So it's a different, but so we've always protected it. So we always ferment it in stainless steel tanks and age it, such as is for 6 or 8 months that it ages, in absolutely full stainless steel tanks. No barrels, because barrels do let micro amounts of oxygen in.
Right.
So for some of our other varieties, in fact, all of our other varieties, we do at least some in barrel, because we like what that little bit of oxygen can do. For Albariño, we've always thought, well, that's going to really hurt the wine, so we've never done it. Then, was it 4 or 5 years ago, we got a chance to go to Spain and spend a few days we're visiting different vineyards and traveling around the region where Albariño was. And unbeknownst to us, we booked a room in a town, the major town. I'm trying to remember the names of the city, but I can't remember the name of it right now. And in that part of the world, and it turned out to be the day of the the annual Albariño
Right,
Festival
which was
in the
hilarious.
town.
So we were there. This was before one of the cruises, one of the Mediterranean cruises, and we just said we went a few days early, and we were just going to spend a little time and go do a little Albariño research. That was the plan. And we had a little bit not gotten our act together. Like, we had figured out the region, but we didn't really have any good contacts at wineries. We didn't know anybody. Like, we didn't have any introductions. So we just said, well, we're going to get there. We're going to do our best to find our way. And we'll taste what we can. And we'd mapped out some places that we'd heard of and we wanted to go, but we didn't, you know, we were just coming in as kind of civilians. We didn't really have any great introductions or anything because we didn't have anybody that we knew. So we said, well, we'll go, we'll get as much as we can out of it. We'll taste, you know, if we're lucky, we'll go to 5 or 6 places and we'll go to the store, we'll buy a few things, the best we can do. And then we get to our little B&B place, and you know, this sweet hostess is saying, I'm so sorry, there's the fiesta and there's people everywhere and it's crazy. And it turns out there's this massive festival dedicated to Albariño. There were like 100 Albariño producers there. We were like, what? We always say it is better to be lucky than good, because we tried and we just weren't organized. So it was fantastic, and it was one of the funniest experiences we've ever had. So, you know, we like to think that the Europeans are so much more refined, especially around drinking, and it's all part of a meal, and it's so much less crazy. This was like the craziest scene I have ever been to. Like, it was this, it made the Maryland Wine Festival look like a prayer meeting. I mean, it was just like, people were just drinking like crazy, and all these groups of people came, and their whole thing was to have t-shirts. So like, you'd have these groups of 10 people with these bright orange or hot pink or neon green t-shirts with their names on them. And it was basically like written on them were like, these are, when I'm asleep on the grass, these are the people you should get to take me home. I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah.
And we were totally jet lagged until we went out for a walk at like, you know, 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning. And the party was still going strong. We were out looking for breakfast. People were offering us wine. It was interesting, but that was all the backdrop. Meanwhile, there were lots of good Albariños to try, but it was
people sleeping on the cobblestone streets. It was kind of crazy. But
really
so the good news, bad news is none of the winemakers were at their places because they were all at the festival. So we didn't go do a lot of visiting, but we got to go try a whole bunch of wines, way more than we thought we could try.
Yeah, it was fascinating. It was fascinating. So we did not sleep on the cobblestones.
And so what we realized when we got there is that what we get in the States is the exact same kind of Albariño we make. Stainless steel fermented, stainless steel aged, preserved the primary aromas. When we got over there, there were all sorts of wineries saying, well, we have this barrel fermented one, and we have this one that's been aged in 3 years, for 3 years on its lees in a tank, and we have this other one that was, I don't know, kept with its juice for 6 months and then done this. All these crazy different winemaking things that we had never really
fermented in wood, which we didn't love, but we tried. That was interesting. Yeah.
So we thought that, we said, this is great. We're going to get to learn how to make different styles of Albariño. And our takeaway was we didn't like any of them. We didn't like anything better than what we already had tried. Yeah. So we tried all kinds of, things that were aged, things that were made in wood, things that were fermented in steel and put in wood, things with left on their skins. And we kind of liked the style that we already had. We already knew it was interesting. Yeah. In fact, we brought a couple of cases of different things back for our staff to do a Albariño tasting with Lucienne, and we all tasted through them all, and we all said this one is skin contacted and this one is barreled, and the ones we liked the best were these traditional, made in the tank, preserved exactly what they are. So that was sort of disappointing. We went all over there thinking we could learn some cool new things to do, and we didn't. So for now, we're gonna at least stick with what we have. We might try a barrel or two at some point. Just you never know. You never know what happens with Black Angle. But our style, there's a question on there about what's our style. We love the classic Albariño style, the great Albariños from Spain, and we would like to make exactly that. And I think we're loving the style that we're getting at Black Ankle. So I think maybe our style, whatever it is, if we want to keep making it like 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, those Albariños are spot on what we want to try to do. So there you go. All right.
Other questions we have. Oh, Bedlam, a question. Let's see. Oh, how do you feel about your other? So Mark, you have a question about the other whites. I think we might do whole happy hours on other white wines. So I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, if it's worth trying to do a quick answer. I think we'll wait. I think we'll just have to tune into the next one to get the answer on that. Sorry, but I know we're close to time already, so we can't take on the other.
One thing I forgot to say about our trip to Spain, that in the Spanish Albariño is mostly grown on pergolas. It's really interesting.
Crazy.
So
I forgot about that.
imagine the trunks going up, and instead of posts, they have these granite pillars or marble pillars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these things would be so expensive nowadays, but I guess that's the rock they had around there. And there's pillars everywhere in the field, and then all of the vines are above your head. It's a roof. It's a roof of vines, and the leaves, and then the clusters hang down. So you're looking up and you're seeing all the clusters hanging down, and yeah, they're not in the sun, and all the stuff is above you. I have no idea how they care for them, how they do their handwork. It did seem like we were more fastidious about that kind of thing than most of them, but it was fascinating to see.
Slightly hotter climate, and that they're protecting the grapes from the sun a little bit. It was a very strange style of growing, I guess, because it's not something that we'd seen really anywhere else. Certainly not in kind of high-end vineyards. It was kind of nuts, but
and we saw there were some. So there are very few vineyards in the world more than about 100 years old, 100 a few, because of the whole phylloxera issue going through and wiping out all the vineyards in Europe. But phylloxera, the little root louse that did that, does not like sandy soils. And there are some sandy soils in this part. Not all the soils, but there are some sandy ones. We tasted some wine from 200 and something year old Albariño vine. We thought, this is really, we actually took a drive to see if we could find the vineyard, and we couldn't find it. We found some old ones, but we couldn't find the exact vineyard. But that was kind of fun. 200-year-old vineyard. So,
very cool. So Daniel, your question about why have we changed when we release the wines? Basically we just try to release them when we think they're ready to drink, or we, always not before we think they're ready to drink, and then when we think people are ready to get them, I guess. It's a little bit of both. So yeah, and it used to be that the Albariño we knew would just be gone as soon as we released it. So we would try to wait till the end of May and then make sure people had it for the summer.
And Daniel had a question about, we used to release it Memorial Day weekend. We used to have, when we didn't make that much wine, we had one bottling window where we bottled, the bottling truck came, we bottled all of our wine in, say, 3 days. We now have 2 bottling windows because we don't want to bottle for 6 or 7 straight days. It's a lot of wine to get ready to bottle. And so we end up doing it early and late. So we're bottling the Albariño a little earlier than we used to, so we don't have to wait till Memorial Day to release it.
It can be ready a little earlier too. Yep.
Great.
So and I see, Dennis, your comment that in Mendoza they also do that. I wonder if it's partly a heat issue. We'll have to look more into that. That's very interesting.
Oh.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
but
good
it's
to know.
Yeah. I'm really kind of cool.
Yeah. No,
I
very
don't ever want to do it. It looks way too hard to take care of.
It seems like you'd be working like this all the time to get anything done. Everything was over your head, but it was very interesting.
Great. Okay.
So I think that covers most of our Albariño questions. Will Albariño be planted on the new property? Yes, I think so. We haven't ordered it yet for the new property, but it is definitely a favorite, as you know. So I think chances are very good that we'll plant it on the new property.
Yeah. Probably.
The next year we'll be doing Albariño tasting in Spain. Here's the I have no idea what's going to happen with the cruise next year. Let's hope we can do it.
If there is one.
I don't know. I don't know for sure. We just have to see what happens in the world and where we end up going. And, if the current plan, we are able to stick to the current plan. So we'll see. And then there's a question, is Albariño 2019 in stores now? I don't think it's in any stores yet. If you have a favorite store that's easier for you to get to than to just buy it from us, let us know and we can try and get it to you. But we're happy to ship it or deliver it directly. So whatever works, we can make happen. So that's great.
All right, some quick updates on all the other projects we updated on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
we finished planting at Live Edge. Yay! We now have 25 acres planted at Live Edge. We've transitioned now to getting the trellis done. The line post, which is the hard part, we did as we planted, so that was huge. So we're now putting in the end post, then we have to put in the wires and the pencil rods, and we'll be ready to go. Those are still a huge project, but relatively easier, so that's really nice. The next big worry is we have 5.5 acres planted there and another couple of acres at Black Ankle with rootstock.
Just roots, yeah.
That needs to be field grafted. We're not sure the field grafting crew can fly out from California to do it. So we're not borrowing trouble for right now. I'm going to wait a couple weeks and see what they say, but we may have to either wait a year, which would not be ideal, or try to do it ourselves, which is not necessarily ideal either. But
we'll see.
Maybe
so that process would happen later in the year anyway. When you're planting the vines, you want to start almost as early as you can. When you're field grafting, you want to do it a little bit later. Once the vines have grown a little bit more, we actually want the new growth on the root to have the shoots to be maybe this big. So the normal timing of that would be end of May, beginning of June. So we have a little time before we would need to graft the rootstock. It's not that we would be doing it this week anyway, but we'll have to see what the world has brought us by that point in time. We don't know. And then the question of the bud break, and are we safe from frost? No. No. So we have bud break. We have the biggest shoots are probably this big. Last week I showed you, Lee, so it's probably about this big. And some places, the farthest behind varieties, the buds aren't really, they're still just kind of fat buds. They're not really leaves at all yet. So we don't get a frost in May. I think the official, for our region, the official considered safe frost-free date is, I believe, May 23rd is sort of the latest recorded frost for our area. Yeah. So, we're getting close, but we're not quite there.
Knock on wood. The forecast looks pretty good.
The near forecast looks good. Yeah.
We got a twinge of 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks from today, I think.
There have been three kind of frosty nights that have hit.
We had one. I think it was a Sunday night 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That for us, only the Chardonnay was really out far enough to be sensitive to it, and even then, the way the vines grow, the buds out at the ends of the canes. You'll see if we lay the canes down across the wire. The ones at the ends are more vigorous and push first. So if we walk through the vineyard, we see maybe 10% of the vines have some damage on the distal bud, it's called, on one side or the other. It's knock on wood, not going to affect our crop at all because we already have too many buds. One of the things we have to do in May is go through and knock buds off so we don't have too much crop and too much crowding. So we'll just adjust right around it. And the other vines were not out far enough to get hurt by it, which is excellent. We've heard there's been some really not good damage, some bad damage in Virginia.
Yeah.
I haven't had the nerve to call anybody yet because they're probably depressed about it, but we'll
wait and
learn
see
soon.
what happens.
I think the higher up vineyards escaped it, and the lower, more frost sensitive kind of ones didn't. And since they were much further out in their bud growth, it hit them harder.
Yeah. So just one last quick question. I see Jean had a question here about what's going on with the other property. We were calling it Devil's Dice Vineyard, but now we're just calling it Reinhardt Road. It doesn't have an official name, but good memory because it's been a long time since we called it anything. So that farm is, there's no planting or anything going on yet. We had some forested areas that we took a timber harvest, and then we cleared a few kind of hedge lines and stuff on that. It is just at this point, basically, we're letting it just kind of lie fallow, and we're letting the we're letting the soil kind of recover from having taken the trees out. And our plans are to start planting it probably not next year, but the year after, again, kind of assuming everything goes along. So it's good. It's just kind of sitting quietly now, growing grass, growing hay, whatever is there, and letting it kind of get ready. So it's still in the works, but nothing, I won't say nothing going on because we've done a lot there, but nothing going on grape-wise yet. It's all in the preparation phase. It's a lot of preparation phase. So thanks for that question. Okay, so we can wrap up. I think we should I love the idea of terrasul and ginger biscuits. I might just have to go make some ginger biscuits. Thank you for that. Sounds awesome. Sounds great. Wow. Thank you. Right. Any excuse for that anyway. So next week, Zoe's reminding us, next week, happy hour, we're going to talk all about France and winemaking and basically the crazy rules and regulations that go into French winemaking and why we're lucky to be where we are as far as life goes. So it is interesting. I mean, obviously there's a huge long history of making great wine, but there's also some crazy regulation that's gone into all of it. So we're going to try to tackle that and talk a little bit more about it. And then just, a few other logistics since May is coming before next weekend. We are going to do 2 pickup days because lots of club members get their wine starting in May or for the May cycle. So we are going to do the 1 to 4 pickup hours, but on Saturday and Sunday, I think just for next weekend. So that's just a heads up on that. And if you know for sure that you intend to come on one of those days, you can let us know and we'll, make sure we have the wines you want and we can try to have your wine ready when you get there. Otherwise, you can come anytime, but you'll just wait a little bit while we pack it up. So that's fine. And the more crab cakes. All right, we may be able to do more crab cakes. We'll see. We'll talk to them about it. I think we could probably do it again. That's great. Oh, and also next week, yes, we are bringing back pizza. So no crab cakes next week, but the pizza guys are back in action for next week. So we'll do the exact same system. You can get your orders in on our website and we'll just have them there and ready for pickup for either Saturday or Sunday. So you've got that. Those steamed crabs. That would be an interesting twist. I don't know how we'd prepare them. Well, we'll think about it. Well, I'll just put it on the chefs. They can worry about the logistics. But, that sounds great. So did we cover all of our, I think, pickups? And then we, of course, all have like this open cheese and everything from our winemakers. I mean, from our dairy friends out there.
Don't forget the cheesemakers.
That's good. That's been good. So I think, I don't know, Zoe, let me know. Did I miss anything? I wish I could see your texting. I love having the Zoom go to everybody. It's kind of fun. So everybody wave goodbye. Hi. Can you guys all see each other? Hi. I want you stop waving and start making the ginger biscuits. There's Kerpal and Karen. I can tell them. All right. Here's Sam. We're going to ship you some Albariño. Be ready. Oh my God, I love seeing everybody. Hi. I can go through. Hi, Rick and Audrey. Tom is upside down. All right, I think we're done. Thank you, guys. So great to see everybody. I'm just going to wade through I guess not. There's Nikki. Hi, there's Janice and Nikki and Larry. So fun. Great to see you all. All right, well, next week, on to French wines, and maybe we'll see you at the Vineyard. And
next weekend.
Yeah, hopefully the gravel pit. Oh, we didn't talk about the gravel. The gravel pit's moving along. We'll see. No update yet. We'll see. All right, take care, everybody. Thank you. Bye.